Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we're going to be covering something with a little bit of annual regularity. Now, if you've been following the channel for any length of time, you'll know I've covered quite a lot of English whisky, and specifically two distilleries I've been covering quite a lot, and that's the Cotswolds and the Lakes Distillery. Now, I've been fortunate enough to get hold of their kind of yearly Founders Club releases. If you weren't aware of my previous videos, I've done the year 1 and the year 2 spirits. I'll put links to those up here throughout the video. But when they first started at the Lakes Distillery, they did a Founders Club. And this was a kind of club for something like 2,700 members, where you paid a lump sum and you'd get a load of benefits. But one of the big benefits was a bottle of whiskey every single year for a decade, for 10 years. That started out with a 1-year matured spirit and a 2-year matured spirit. And I got to cover both of those because a good friend of mine is one of the Founders Club members. This year, they've got their first Founders Club single malt whiskey. And that's in this little job here. Obviously, the Founders Club's got 4 members, but I was lucky enough to get a sample of this. And this will be their 3-year offering, and we're going to see what differences they've done and if it compares to the other two in any way, shape or form. Now, to save you from going back to the previous videos, I'll say that the previous videos, the year 1 and the year 2 spirits, they were both ex-bourbon barrels and presented at 40%. And although the year 1 was a really good kind of indicative way of showing like the 1-year spirit, and it was good, you know, to see where it might go. The second year I didn't think had changed much at all. Now, the third year, they've actually gone something a little bit different. They haven't got the same spirit as matured for 3 years, and instead of just using ex-bourbon barrels, they've expanded that into ex-bourbon, ex-sherry and ex-wine casks, and they've actually upped the ABV to 46.6% as well. Now, just like the other two, unfortunately I don't have them to compare with, but they were quite straw-like, almost clear in fact. If you watch the videos, you'll see that you couldn't even tell there was whiskey in the glass. Of course, it wasn't whiskey, it was just spirit. This now is proper whiskey, and it is natural colour. So this is all from the blend, really. The ex-bourbon, I can't imagine, would have much more colour to it than what we had before, but the ex-wine and the ex-sherry casks will definitely have had some influence on that. Let's get into the whiskey itself and see what we get from it. Now, on the nose, it's got really glorious kind of sherry notes to it, and that kind of wine cask influence is there as well. It's quite sweet, but not overly so. And it really doesn't smell that young either. When you get young whiskey, you tend to get like an overpowering kind of malty sensation. But not here. It's feisty for sure, but there's nothing there that would kind of really give it away in a blind tasting, I don't think. Let's try a little bit. It's quite fiery on the taste. Lots of spiciness, peppers, things like that. Like white pepper, I would say. Lots of sherry influence, lots of the wine influence there. There's not much of that kind of bourbony flavours that were there before. And there is more of that malt on the tongue, that's for sure. But I have to say, knowing the age of this really makes it quite remarkable. They've definitely upped their game since last year, and I think the years 1 and 2 were good collector's items that the Founders Club people would have in their shelves. And I have to admit that when I first heard of the Founders Club, I was worried that that's all it would be. It would just be a 10-year release of collector's items that would sit up on the shelf. But having tried this now, and this is the second time I've managed to try this lovely thing, I'm really quite impressed with it, and it's actually a drinkable whiskey. One that you should be proud of to show people, I think. It does kind of remind me of what the Cotswolds are doing. You know, they didn't put anything out for year 1 or year 2. Some test batch series they did, but when they released their actual single malt, I was blown away by how good quality it was. And for 3 years, you know, we're, as whiskey connoisseurs, whiskey fans, we're kind of instilled to think that a number is all important. Must be 12 years, must be 15 years, etc. And no age statements are bad things, but I've been trying to break through that a lot. I've been trying to bring you guys more things that are no age statements and that are pretty good. Of course, this does carry some kind of age statement, although it's not on this particular bottle. When you get the full bottles, you are getting the 3 on it, say this is the 3rd one. And the same with the Cotswolds, they mark that with their year of barley rather than an age statement per se, but if you're savvy you can figure that out. But I think what they're making is really quite remarkable. The sign of quality is there, and I want to say new master blender, but he's not really new, he's been there for nearly 2 years. Darvel Gandhi, he was ex Macallan employee, whiskey maker at Macallan. He's doing wonderful things there, producing that still bonnets as well, which I've also covered. Put a link up there. But I think it's a really good indication of the whiskey they're producing. I've not been able to try many of their single malts right now because they've gone to auction and things like that, so they're quite hard to try and get hold of. So I'm really lucky to be able to try this and see where they're going, and I'm impressed. Unfortunately, I can't recommend you buy this because it's not for sale, and if it is for sale, then those founders, people who paid that money, are going all out on spending that out and maybe getting it out into auction, which would be weird, I think. But yeah, unfortunately you can't buy this. It's just my opinion on a really young whiskey, and hopefully I'll continue doing these videos over the next, well, I guess in the next 7 years now. Cheers.